Greetings, saints of the Most High. Welcome to another installment of the Messianic Torah Observer. Rod Thomas coming to you on a beautiful spring preparation day here in the DFW. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to fellowship with me. And as always, beloved, it is my hope, trust, and prayer that this installment of TMTO finds you, your families, and your fellowships well and blessed. As I am publishing this discussion, it is the 6th day of the 12th month of Yah's sacred calendar year, which translates to March 7, 2025. And we are potentially less than a month away from the biblical Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah 2025. As we near the end of this month, we'll keep you apprised of the outcome of the barley crop and new moon searches and sightings in the land of Israel. Very exciting month we have ahead of us, and we will keep you abreast of all of the exciting observational calendar happenings. Now, I'm about to say something here that I normally don't do. I haven't done in quite a while. Especially since we've relocated here in the DFW, and it is regarding support. It is financial support. Those of you who have been following me for any length of time will know that I do not solicit financial support for this ministry. I always covet your prayers, but I do not solicit financial support for this ministry. This is a ministry of love from us. We support all the expenses associated with keeping this ministry, the website, all of the things that go with running and publishing and hosting of this ministry on the internet. We cover from our own resources, our own increase. But we also have a ministry called Qumran Family Foundation. And I mentioned this way back in October, November of last year, that we took a ministry or a missionary trip over to Kenya, and we have been ministering to the widows and orphans of Kenya. And I'm not going to make this a long drawn out request, but if you have been getting anything from this ministry of importance, if you have been blessed by this ministry, if this ministry has helped edify you and has helped improve or just brought you much substance in your walk with Messiah, can I ask you, please, humbly, to consider supporting financially Qumran Family Foundation's Kenya ministry of helping the widows and orphans of Kenya. Go on over to that website if you really are being led to or considering prayerfully supporting Qumran Family Foundation. Go on over to QumranFamilyFoundation.org. Again, QumranFamilyFoundation.org. And there you'll get all of the particulars of what this ministry does, and if you're so led, how you may support this vital mission in Kenya. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I want to thank you for considering supporting this very worthy cause. We're looking at going back to Kenya to check on some things that have been going on with the ministry there. We're having a building constructed to teach the widows how to read and write, and also some structures and some support systems to help educate the orphans that are there in Western Kenya. So we're looking forward to that, and so anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated. As for today, we're going to take a break from our Melchizedek series, at least for this Shabbat. Instead, I want to give some attention and honor to the Jewish observance known as Shabbat Zachor. Shabbat Zachor, spelled Z as in zebra, A, C as in Charlie, H-O-R. It's pronounced Zachor. This is a special Shabbat. It's special for two reasons. One, because of where it falls out on Yah's sacred calendar. And second, because of what it represents and honors. This special Sabbath is known to our Jewish cousins as Shabbat Zachor, or the Sabbath of Remembrance. Calendar-wise, this is the Shabbat that precedes, or that is just before the Jewish holiday of Purim. And if you're not familiar with Purim, it is the Jewish holiday that commemorates Queen Esther's, also known as Hadassah's, intervention that saved her people from genocide during the time of the Babylonian captivity. The entire story, including how the holiday of Purim came about, is recorded in the book of Esther. Most of our Jewish cousins who keep the Hillel calendar will celebrate Purim on Friday, March 14, 2025, while those of us who follow the observational calendar, Purim will occur next Sabbath, March 15, 2025. As it relates to Purim, there are a few things that we need to bear in mind. One, it is a Jewish holiday. It is not, I repeat, it is not one of the 7 mandated feasts or Moedim of Yehovah. So we are not compelled by the Almighty to keep or celebrate it if we are not so led. Second, Purim always occurs on the 14th day of the 12th month. Our Jewish cousins refer to this 12th month of Yah's calendar year as Adar or Adar. And if you're not aware, for those of us who keep the observational calendar, the 12th month fell on this past Sunday, March 2nd, 2025. Third, we always reckon Jewish holidays and feasts or Moedim of Yah starting at sundown the evening before this special day. And it ends at sundown on that special day. I only brought up Purim for orienting us in relation to when Shabbat Zachor, or the Sabbath of Remembrance, occurs each calendar year. And like Purim, it is a Jewish tradition. It is not a holy convocation day. Zachor is a Hebrew term that means to remember something or to recall something or recall a thing. Remember what? Remember or recall what? Well, we'll soon find out as we get further into today's discussion. Now, tradition holds that on this particular Sabbath each year, Deuteronomy, Devarim chapter 25, verses 17 through 19 is read besides the scheduled weekly Torah reading. Furthermore, 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 2 through 34 is read as an additional half-Torah reading. In honor of Shabbat Zachor, or the Sabbath of Remembrance, let's read Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 25, verses 17, 18, and 19. I'll be reading from the Scripture's ISR version of the text. Verse 17. And this is Moshe speaking, having received this information or this instruction from Yehovah. Moshe says, remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Mitzrayim. Verse 18, how he met you on the way and attacked your back, all the feeble ones in your rear, when you were tired and weary. And he did not fear Elohim, he being Amalek. Verse 19, therefore it shall be, when Yehovah your Elohim has given you rest from your enemies all around, in the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you to possess as an inheritance, that you blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Don't forget. Do not forget. Again, that was Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 17 through 19. So we find recorded here in this passage mention of the unprovoked and vicious attack on the weakest members of our ranks by the Amalekites as we journeyed out of Egypt on our way to Mount Sinai. And that incident is recorded in Exodus, or Shemot, chapter 17, verses 8 through 16. Yah, in mentioning this brutal, unprovoked attack by the Amalekites, commands us to remember what the Amalekites did to us on that terrible day. And in Moshe's instruction to us to remember the evil of Amalek, we were further instructed to, quote, blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens, end quote. Verse 19 of chapter 17 of Exodus. We find recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 2 through 34, the story of our first king, Saul, or Shaul, whom Yehovah commanded through the prophet or judge Samuel to go to battle against the Amalekites. In that commandment to war against the Amalekites, Saul was supposed to annihilate every living soul and destroy all their possessions with extreme prejudice. Saul complied with Abba's command and took his warriors to battle against the Amalekites. Although Saul was successful in his campaign against Amalek, he captured the Amalekite king Agag alive. He took possession of some of their choicest livestock, which he later claimed he intended to use for sacrifices unto Yehovah. Furthermore, Saul allowed his men to lay hold of some of the Amalekites' valuable possessions. This blatant disregard by Saul to carry out Yehovah's instructions to the letter infuriated Yehovah. So Yah dispatched the prophet or judge Samuel to confront Saul about that and make him answer for his transgression. In responding to Samuel's allegations that he failed to follow Yehovah's commandments to destroy every Amalekite living soul in possession, Saul admitted to giving in to the desires of his warriors and his own heart and reasoning on that matter. But the king justified his failure to obey Yehovah by stating his intention to sacrifice the livestock unto Yehovah. Yeah, right. But Samuel cut Saul's lame excuses off by putting the concept of unwavering obedience to the instructions of Yehovah into proper perspective for him. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22. The Septuagint reads, "Does Yehovah take pleasure in whole burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in hearing the words of Yehovah? Behold, obedience is better than a good sacrifice, and hearkening than the fat of rams." Obedience is better than a sacrifice. And it is at this point in the confrontation between Samuel and Saul that the prophet delivered unto Saul the harshest blow, that because of his blatant disregard for Yehovah's explicit commands, he was going to strip Saul of his throne. Chapter 15, verses 23, 26, and 28 of the first book of Samuel. And this passage these verses read as follows, verse 26. And I'm reading from the Scriptures ISR translation or version of 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 23 through 28. But I will be reading verses 20. Yeah, I'm going to read the whole thing. Why not? Let's just make it easier. So I will skip verse 20. No, I'm going to read the whole thing. Let's start at verse 23. "For rebellion is as the sin of divination." This is being spoken by the prophet Samuel to Saul. And Samuel says to Saul, "For rebellion is as the sin of divination." Rebellion is as the sin of divination. Think about that. And he continues, and stubbornness is as wickedness and idolatry. So the next time that we're rebellious, we're stubborn, we have to know how Yah sees these things. He sees rebellion as divination, as worshiping pagan idols to that level. And when we're stubborn and we refuse to do what Father tells us to, he sees it as equivalent to being a worshiper of idols. And Samuel continues, because you have rejected the word of Yehovah, he also does reject you as sovereign. Verse 24. And Shaul said to Shemuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the mouth of Yehovah and your words, because I feared the people and I listened to their voice. Verse 25, and now please pardon my sin and return with me and let me bow myself to Yehovah. Verse 26, but Shemuel said to Shaul, I do not return with you, for you have rejected the word of Yehovah, and Yehovah does reject you from being sovereign over Yisrael. Verse 27, and as Shemuel turned around to go away, Shaul took hold of the edge of his robe, and it tore. Oh, that was not good. Verse 28, and Shemuel said to him, Yehovah, oh, this is powerful. Yehovah has torn the reign of Yisrael from you today and has given it to a neighbor of yours, better than you. Pretty powerful words and principles, wouldn't you say? Circling back to our reading of Deuteronomy, or Devarim chapter 25, verses 17 through 19, Moshe reminds his listeners, who were preparing to seize the land of promise, of the Amalekite incident. Moshe stresses to this righteous generation that they must remember, that they must Zachor, what Amalek did to their parents during our exodus out of Egypt. And he adds depth to the Amalek story by reminding his listeners that Amalek was a merciless adversary who took advantage of the members who were bringing up our rear. He describes those members who were bringing up our rear as being tired and hungry. Yet Amalek attacked them because he did not fear Elohim. How could the Amalekites be devoid of any fear of Yehovah? They'd no doubt heard stories of what Yehovah did to our former Egyptian taskmasters and the unfathomable wonders and exploits Yah wrought on our behalf, yet the Amalekites showed no respect, no fear of Elohim. And so Amalek's attack was much more of an attack against Yehovah than it was against us, Yah's covenant people. And so Moshe declared to us that after we peacefully settle in the land of promise, we were to blot out the name of Amalek from under the sun, which the Haftarah reading of 1 Samuel 15 verses 2 through 34 is about. So why is it important to remember the Amalek incident? And why are these readings tied to this Sabbath? The Amalekites were descendants of Esau. Scripture assigns another name to Esau, that of Edom. So the Amalekites were Edomites. Recall that Esau was Jacob's or Jacob's older brother, and despite Esau being the older of the two, Yehovah chose Yaakov or Jacob to perpetuate the covenant he'd established with their father Yitzchak or Isaac. And thus, the covenant birthright was passed on to Yaakov, Jacob, instead of Esau. And thus began the age-old feud between Jacob or Jacob and Esau. And although the Amalekites were simply biological descendants of Esau or Edom, they embodied or they were possessed by the spirit of Esau. The spirit of Esau or Edom is one that seeks to destroy Jacob, to destroy Jacob or Yisrael and her purpose. Even worse, the spirit of Esau or Edom is one that endeavors, tirelessly so, to undermine and stymie Yah's holy and righteous will and purpose. And this is why Yah commanded us to remember what they did and what they're about, and to ensure that they were entirely wiped out. The essence and spirit of Esau or the Amalekites, in one form or another, has and continues to attack us generation after generation. Each one of our generations faces a corresponding generation of Amalekites, whose expressed purpose is to destroy us as Yehovah's set-apart people and to undermine Yah's will and purpose on this earth. As we previously mentioned, next weekend, many of us will, in some form or another, celebrate or observe Purim. The arch protagonist of Purim is Haman, whom the author of the book of Esther identifies as the son of Hammedatha. Haman was a high-level Persian official of Ahasuerus' empire. Through political manipulation, he finagled a royal edict from the Persian king to have every Jew in the Persian Empire exterminated. Esther, a Jewess turned queen, interceded on behalf of her people, and the kill order was mitigated. Now, Jewish tradition has it that Haman was of Edomite or Amalekite heritage. This, according to Josephus's account in his Antiquity of the Jews, and if you're interested in checking that out, it's Antiquity of the Jews 11.6.5. Now, this belief that Haman was of Edomite or Amalekite lineage is often used to explain why Haman sought the destruction of the Jewish nation. But many Bible scholars poo-poo the accuracy of that tradition, that Haman was of Edomite or Amalekite heritage. Nevertheless, even if Haman was not an Edomite, he and his cohorts possessed the spirit of Esau or of Edom. And so, like the Greeks and the Romans that would later emerge on the world scene, he was a willing proxy and emissary of the kingdom of darkness, whose stated and avowed goal is to destroy Yehovah's set-apart people. But each time the enemy sends forth another Amalekite or Amalek to exterminate us, Yehovah raises those he equips to withstand them, such as he did with Mordecai and Queen Esther. Nothing has changed, however, throughout the centuries. The generational Amalekites are always concocting ploys to defy Yehovah and harm his people. And this is why Yehovah commanded us in our reading today to remember, to Zachor, Amalek and his evil deeds. Zachor then means to place that key historical event of Amalek preying upon the members of our nation who were bringing up our rear as we journeyed to Sinai as a memorial. Yah commands us not only to Zachor that event, but to teach and discuss the merits of that event amongst ourselves, in our congregations, in our assemblies, at home at the dinner table with our families. Indeed, the latest iteration of Amalek and the perpetuation of the spirit of Esau is seen in the people of Gaza, who go by the faux moniker of Palestinians and their Hamas henchmen. These tried their best to annihilate our Jewish cousins on October 7, 2023. And because of their Hasatan-infused hatred for Yehovah and his people, many hundreds of Israeli citizens and soldiers and countless thousands of their own people have lost their lives. even amid ceasefire and peace talks, these Amalekite-like folk continue to spew and perpetuate their ultimate intent to, one way or another, destroy Yah's covenant people. And if that weren't enough, their evil spirit of Esau or of Edom has perpetuated and propagated itself throughout the world, on the streets of the United States and European nations even, as well as on countless college and university campuses. The spirit of Esau reigns heavily upon the foolish and the ignorant of the United States, of the European nations, and on the college and university campuses. I can't help but wonder if the hearts of these misguided and evil souls were softened and they had at least a modicum of fear for Yehovah. Fear for Yehovah. Would they repent from their evil ways? These folks don't know what they're doing when they chant their foolishness from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Do they have any idea the depth of evil that they're spewing forth out of their mouths? I dare say they don't. That is the spirit of Esau, perpetuated, 30 some odd hundred years later from the time that it first happened, that it first entered the world scene. This is why it is so important to pray daily for the peace of Jerusalem, as stipulated in Psalm 122, verse 6. Regardless, beloved, it's going to take Yeshua returning to this world, eliminating the kingdom of darkness and its minions, and establishing his eternal and righteous throne in the kingdom of Yah, in order for that spirit of Esau, that spirit of Edom, to be vanquished from this planet. For we who are the redeemed of Yehovah today, it behooves us to hold in remembrance, that is, Zachor, the reality of Amalek throughout our history, and his persistent efforts to stymie Yehovah's will and purpose, and to destroy Yehovah's set-apart people. We remember or Zachor these things by rehearsing the story in our hearts, minds, and among members in our assemblies and family. Recognize, understand, and watch for the modern-day Amaleks that are lurking about the world. These seek to rob us of our opportunities to walk in Torah and worship the Elohim of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and to advance and promote the coming Malchut Elohim, the kingdom of Yah, to image Yehovah in all the world. Shammai Engelmeyer, in his article entitled Why We Must Remember Amalek, goes even further by suggesting that the most formidable Amalek that any of us will have to face through our walk with Messiah is the Amalek from within. We all possess Amaleks within us. For whenever we resist obeying Yehovah's instructions in righteousness, whenever we quench Abba's set-apart spirit operating in our lives, whenever we give in to our base nature and turn our backs on holiness and righteousness, whenever we neglect or refuse to teshuvah after transgressing Yah's Torah, or offending him by our actions, evil thoughts, and ungodly words, whenever we fail to study and embrace Yah's words of life because our flesh is too weak to fend off the slings and arrows of the enemy, we entertain and permit the spirit of Esau, the spirit of Amalek, the spirit of Edom to reign over our lives. And we must annihilate, we must blot out that inner Amalek with extreme prejudice and wipe it from all remembrance. All of which is to say, beloved, let us examine ourselves daily and flesh out the Amalek and the spirit of Esau or Edom that may take up residence within us. Let us seek Yehovah's help in ridding ourselves of it each and every day. Thus, let us take Shabbat Zachor to heart in 2025. For it is through this critical annual rehearsal, this remembrance, that we become better prepared to deal with the Amalekites that encroach upon our lives and that hinder our walk in Messiah. Have a meaningful and blessed Shabbat Zachor. Shavua Tov, Shabbat Shalom. Until next time, take care.